Welcome back to another week of Instigating with Clarkey and Drury, here with our friends on Rogers TV and all across social media at Instigating Pod. Very exciting because this is OHL opening week. And to talk about OHL opening week, I thought I need a guy who's kind of an expert and has been doing this for a little while. Yeah, I've been doing it for a few years now, but not near as long as this guy. Everybody in Kitchener is going to be fired up. I don't know what our viewers in London will think, but you're just going to have to deal with it. I'm very excited to bring on my friend, longtime radio play-by-play voice of the Kitchener Rangers on AM 570. You know him from his show as well, the Mike Farwell Show, Fridays with Farwell. He's all over the place. I'm very pleased to welcome my friend, Mike Farwell, to the show. Farwell, how are you, brother?
I'll tell you what, Ryan, that is the nicest way I've ever been introduced as old before. Thank you for that. He's been around a long time, a few years. Yeah, he's the oldest guy I know that's going to come on my show with me. I love you for it, brother. This is why we get along.
I didn't mean to say you're old, and off camera we were talking, you don't look old, brother. Like, you look fantastic still. This guy's freshly married. Congratulations on that as well. Like, you're glowing, if anything, man.
Well, and that's the marriage that does it, right? Talk about an off-season acquisition, Drury. I got myself the best catch in the pond, and now she's going to say, okay, go to work and leave me alone until April.
Yeah, screw Connor McDavid. You've signed the biggest free agent that's out there, man.
Absolutely.
Congratulations. Awesome stuff, dude.
Thank you.
Exciting summer for yourself, obviously. But a summer of, obviously, you know, both the clubs that we represent kind of asking some questions. And let's start with your Kitchener Rangers, because I think the questions with the Rangers going into this year are quite different from what my Guelph Storm are asking themselves. And I think the big question for the Rangers, just how far can they push this talented roster this year? Really impressive season last year. Jackson Parsons was an absolute freak. It was so much fun to watch the team. What do you think their potential is this year? Because I'm looking at them as a big-time player in the West.
I would have to agree with that. And what I'm most interested to see from the Rangers this year is, can they meet the moment? Can they live up to the expectations that they have set for themselves, right? That's been the interesting thing since this coaching staff, led by UC Ahokas, along with Jeff Kurzakis and Brad Flynn, came to this team a couple of years ago. I would argue that the past couple of years, the Kitchener Rangers have exceeded expectations both times. Even last year, at the end of the season, when the Rangers became only the fourth team in franchise history to reach 100 points or more, head coach UC Ahokas joked that not bad for a rebuilding team, right? Because 2 years in, we thought, it's going to be a tough year for the Rangers. Okay, it's a rebuild for the Rangers. And both times they exceeded those expectations. So now I think they've set a new bar. And you look at, yes, Jackson Parsons was a freak last season, and Kitchener got great production out of their other overagers in Trent Swick and Adrian Misiljevic. But you remove those players and you're returning virtually the same team from a season ago. You've got overagers like Jack Pridham, who promised to be pretty productive for this team. So my big question is, can they live up to now the expectations they have created for themselves? I think the answer is yes, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch it happen.
I completely agree. They're one of the teams that I think a lot of people have their eye on. And before we steer away specifically from the Rangers, I want to ask you about some of the young guys that really took a big step forward last year. And I think that everybody's confident they can continue to build on that. And that's Tanner Lamb and, of course, Luke Ellenis, who Ellenis in particular, Lamb is a small guy that plays way bigger than his frame. Everybody knows about the hands he has. Ellenis in particular, like, that kid impressed the hell out of me last year. And it wasn't the numbers he put up, it was what he did away from the puck. And for a young guy like that to be that drilled and dialed in at center, being responsible away from the puck, he really jumped off the ice sheet at me every time we saw him, Mike.
When you look at the deal that was made to acquire Luke Ellenis, it was almost an afterthought, just in terms of, I don't have it off the top of my head, but the Rangers got him from Barrie in a swap, and I think there were draft picks sent the other way. So you're thinking this is a warm body who there wasn't room for in Barrie. He had the injury, so he didn't play with the big club. And you're thinking this is a guy that's just going to fill out a roster spot with the Kitchener Rangers. And what you saw in your viewings, Ryan, I got to see night in and night out. I was not surprised in the least that the Ottawa Senators jumped in and got this guy in the NHL draft a season ago, because he's as competitive as they come and has tons of productivity for the Rangers' top 6 forward. So, and then of course he cements his legacy, if you will, by scoring the overtime winning goal in Game 7 versus Windsor last year in the second round when the Rangers came back from 3-0 down. So excellent eye there. And we've really enjoyed watching Luke Ellenis with the Kitchener Rangers. It's funny you mentioned Tanner Lamb as well, because when it comes to Tanner Lamb, you talk about him playing bigger than his size, but as a guy who is smaller in stature, the criticisms often are, well, he doesn't go to those dirty areas. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that physically. But it was pointed out to me about 2/3 of the way through the season last year. And the person I was talking to said, let the critics be the critics. You just watch the score sheet, because you're just going to see, oh, there's Tanner Lamb with 2 more assists. Oh, there's Tanner Lamb with 2 more assists. Ryan, by the time Tanner Lamb is done in the Ontario Hockey League, he likely will be a 100-point player in one of these upcoming seasons. So that's another guy that's just so skilled with the puck. Yeah, he's a little smaller, but folks, do what the guy that I talked to last year told me to do. Just check the score sheet at the end of the night and you'll see, oh yeah, there's Tanner Lamb with another couple of assists.
Yeah, he's all over the point sheet, and I think that he absolutely has 100-point ceiling just with his playmaking ability. And like, this is without even bringing up the fact that Nashville first rounder Cameron Reed is going to be back patrolling the blue line, one of the most skilled, smooth blue liners in the league. It's going to be really, really fun to see what the Rangers have in store. And again, before we move on to kind of talking about, some league-wide storylines, I want to bring up this little image here. Obviously, we're looking at inside the odd, and I'll get us a better look at it here, because the obviously our 2 teams that we represent, the Guelph Storm and of course the Kitchener Rangers, named finalists for the 2027 Memorial Cup. There it is. There's the quote from Mr. Joe Birch, who's just an absolute legend. As you look at this, and you were obviously around and remember very well the last time the Rangers hosted the Memorial Cup. I was a little kid when Guelph had it in 2002. But when you boil it down, you look at these 2 markets, 2 pretty good places for this tournament to potentially land, eh, Mike?
It's funny when I'm looking at that image you've got on the screen. That is exactly the view that I had as a kid when I would go to Kitchener Rangers games. There were yellow benches. We called them the banana benches up there where the restaurant is now at the odd. And that's the view I would have when I went to games with my buddies. Yes, to get directly to your question, the Ontario Hockey League, Canadian Hockey League, really can't go wrong with these 2 markets, Guelph and Kitchener, being in the running to host the Memorial Cup in 2027. Obviously, I have a bias. Luckily for me, I've had the opportunity. I was let's just go back to how old I am. Okay. I was in the very infancy of my OHL broadcasting career, Ryan, when the Guelph Storm hosted in 2002. So Matt Newby, who I've watched grow up with the Storm organization, he and I had a great chat about Guelph bidding again and what it was like the last time, because both he and I were there. And look at what he's accomplished in the year since. And then look at what I've accomplished in the year since. Like, let's let that sink in for a moment. But both markets have a lot to offer. Selfishly and with bias, I do think Kitchener might have an advantage, particularly when it comes to the venue. The Sleeman Center has maybe more in the way of creature comforts, but I was watching some news coverage on TV just last night, because the Rangers had invited the media to take a look at the new digs, right? There's a new dressing room, new weight room, bunch of new facilities for the players, new media room, etc. And the reporter doing the story did a stand-up in the empty arena. And I commented to my wife as we were watching the news story, I said, look at that arena. Like, isn't that thing beautiful? And it really is. It's got all the character you'd want in a hockey arena. And I know the seats are a little cramped for the modern fan, but goodness gracious me, you'd have a hard time feeling more like you're in a hockey arena than when you're in the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. And then just going back to what I said about where I would sit and the perspective I had with that image you showed, we've undergone 3 in the city renovations since that time, and the building just keeps getting better and better while maintaining its original charm. So I'm looking forward to the announcement November, early December-ish to see which one of the teams, Guelph or Kitchener and cities, gets awarded that 2027 Memorial Cup. But we're in good standing either way.
I certainly think so. And yeah, Guelph obviously really clinging to the hope that the city's bicentennial will maybe tilt people's favor. Either way, both facilities are great. The people that work in both facilities are fantastic. The broadcasters are pretty okay too. And either way, it's going to be fantastic, and we'll be in attendance regardless, because it's just going to be such a landmark and tremendous event. It always is when the Memorial Cup comes around. Mike, let's look around the league here. Obviously, the first edition of these, everybody's favorite thing to look at. The power rankings are out. I don't know that I'm surprised to see the 4 teams at the top. And let's start with, obviously, the Brantford Bulldogs, who are actually ranked 2nd in the entire Canadian Hockey League. You look at what that team's been building and the pieces that they're returning this year, and what guys like Nick Lardis got up to, Merrick Van Acker. I'm not surprised at all to see the Bulldogs up there.
I don't know about you, Ryan, but as every season is about to start, so we're in this week of opening week, I like to stick my neck out there, have a little bit of fun, throw out my predictions. And the only thing that I was really certain of was that the Brantford Bulldogs were likely to dominate the Eastern Conference. And quite frankly, if you want to get to the Memorial Cup through the Ontario Hockey League, you're likely going to have to get through the Brantford Bulldogs. So no, like you, I'm not surprised at all to see the Bulldogs there. When I was trying to handicap the Western Conference, I had a much harder time. But the next 3 teams you see there after Brantford, with Windsor, Kitchener, and London, were the 3 teams that I basically could have put balls into the bingo machine and seen which one came out first, because those 3 teams to me look like the cream of the West. But Brantford, not surprised at all with the buzz. Watch for Jake O'Brien to have a monster year. I think the Bulldogs arrived a little ahead of schedule last year, quite frankly. And Nick Lardis, sure, huge part of that, but there is plenty of firepower left behind. And just consider the moves that were made. I think, to be honest with you, Ryan, that Brantford felt like they got bullied a little bit, pushed around a little bit by Oshawa in that semifinal series last year. So what do? They go out and trade for Ryder Bolton. Ain't nobody know how pushing around the Brantford Bulldogs this year. So I love what they've done. I love how they look, and definitely the odds-on favorite.
Yeah, and you just know that the leadership group up there, they're going to make a big splash as well in the trade market. You know that they're going to add because they feel like it's a go for it year. I think they're going to floor it. Windsor, again, a team that has swung back up on the right. I actually think that the battle that we're going to see, that we hope to see, I think, as fans, between the Spitfires and Rangers for top spot in the West is going to be absolutely dynamite. The Knights are still going to be competitive. They always are. They're going to be in the mix. I don't know that they're deep enough, though, to challenge for the top seed again. I'm looking down here, though, and I look at a team that everybody has been kind of, perplexed by, and for very good reasons of their own doing, and that's the Niagara Ice Dogs. You look at them ranked 5th there, and you sit there and look at the talent on the roster and go, that makes sense, but just the franchise's inability at times to get out of its own way, it makes me question things. And I love the Rubrick kid. Ryan Rubrick's an incredible talent. I think he's a future 100-point scorer, no doubt. You look at that team, though, and I have this undying sense of prove it to me when it comes to the Ice Dogs. And I wonder if you feel the same way, Mike.
100% I do. And I think you put it perfectly, right? A team that doesn't, I think it's an owner, frankly, that can't seem to get out of his own way.
Yeah.
And let the hockey people do the hockey things, etc. But just going back to sticking my neck out as the season's about to start. And yeah, I was pretty sure Brantford was going to be tops in the East. When I scribbled everything down, I had the Niagara Ice Dogs in second, winning their division. Brantford wins the East Division. Who wins the Central? I think it's Niagara, but I had to stop and say, but am I sure about that? Given the recent history, I got burned a little bit by Niagara last year along the lines of what you were just talking about. I said, listen, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And the Ice Dogs had shown us for years that they just couldn't get out of their own way. And they missed the playoffs and they missed the playoffs and they missed the playoffs and they missed the playoffs. So I said, I'm not yet buying in to what the Ice Dogs are doing. And of course, then they start like a house on fire. I think they were in first place at Christmas time, certainly into December. Tough second half when they started having those off-ice issues again. They ultimately finished 7th, but they did make the playoffs. I like what they've done here, Ryan. Frank Evola's got a tremendous track record, comes over from a great pedigree in Windsor with Oshawa. I think he's the right man for the job there. I like what they've done with Chris Barch behind the bench. Can Darren DeDobler keep his fingers out of the pie? We'll see. But for the reasons that you mentioned and then some, I really like what the Ice Dogs are presenting on paper. And I think they should have a good year. And I like that for St. Catharines because they've got a great junior hockey market. And my goodness, is the Meridian Center a nice building to see a game.
Oh, it's a beautiful rink. My best friend he actually interned there in college, and I went down to a bunch of games. It's an unbelievable spot, and the fan base down there are awesome too. Like they deserve to watch a good product. And I think just looking at the roster, I'm not surprised to see them land where they are, but I just hope that comes to fruition a full season through and they can give them a deep run there. They certainly deserve it. Is there any dark horse team that jumps off the page at you that people are maybe a little low on that you think could surprise people and do a bit of damage?
I think I'll throw out 3 if I'm allowed. North Bay being one of them in the East. I just like what they've been doing there. We know they're in the midst of a rebuild, and I'm not expecting great things, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me if they ended up higher in the standings than others thought. I'll throw Flint into that mix as well. And maybe that's just me hedging my bets because I did not place Flint high in my preseason prognostications, in part just because of the Niagara Ice Dogs factor. There's some stuff, behind the scenes. Ownership has been problematic in the past. It seems to have sorted itself out, but the Firebirds, for whatever reason, haven't found that magic formula. So even though I have them lower, I look at them on paper and think, gosh, I think there's reason to be optimistic there. So maybe they'd only surprise me if they finish in a higher spot, but I think they might. And then the other team I'm going to throw into this because some other prognostications that I've read had Saginaw in a similar spot to where I had them looking into it coming into this season. And I thought it's time for Saginaw to pay the piper after a Memorial Cup run, a strong season last year where they held on to the Misas and the Parex of the world. But as players graduate and or get traded, it's likely to be a tougher season for the Saginaw Spirit. But then I look at Jilkin and Klepov and these Russians that they've put together, and I'm thinking to myself, there's a little bit of pop there all of a sudden. If they get decent goaltending, you don't know what's to come. So I think the Saginaw Spirit might. So North Bay, Flint, and Saginaw, I look at as maybe a little bit of dark horses that might do better than you expected them to coming into the season.
Saginaw was the one that I looked at and thought the exact same thing, because I think that people easily go, well, Parek's gone and Misa's not likely to come back. He could, but if he does, maybe they flip him. And I'm glad you brought up Demian Jilkin too, because Rangers and Storm fans are very familiar with his older brother, Danny Jilkin, of course, who I always lovingly refer to as Danny Dangles. And Danny told me a few years ago before he actually got shipped off to Kitchener, you think I'm good, wait until you see my little brother. And he was tied for the lead in preseason scoring. He has absolutely filthy hands. He can do a lot of stuff out there. I think Saginaw, people are waving them out of the picture a little too quickly. And I definitely agree with your other takes there. Mike, before I let you go, want to ask you just obviously about another season coming up here in the OHL. You've been doing this for a while. We've covered that. what is so special about being not only a part of the OHL and our broadcasting fraternity, but what's so special to you about walking into the Odd every night and calling Rangers hockey on 570? What's special about it?
For me, it's my hometown. I was born and raised in Kitchener. I went to games as a kid. My dad was a teacher. Paul Reinhart was one of his students back in the day and came to our house for a barbecue. I'll never forget having Paul Reinhart in our backyard having dinner with us when I was a kid. So, look, I was hooked from an early age, having the game that I love so accessible, the Memorial Auditorium. I remember when I was really young and we would drive across town to go to games, and I felt like I was going to Maple Leaf Gardens. Like, the drive seemed like it was forever. It was probably 10 minutes, but it was just this big deal to go to a game, right? Mom would pop some popcorn at home for us. We'd put it in a brown paper bag and take it into the arena. Used to be able to do that back in the day. Anyway, really for me, it's the hometown team. And I grew up watching them. I grew up listening to Don Cameron and Gary Doyle on the radio, and to get a chance to work alongside those guys and then have the role that I have today with the team. I'll never say the voice of, because that will always be Don Cameron, but to be now the guy that describes the action for the Kitchener Rangers on the radio and getting to do it in the arena that I've already talked so much about, pinch me, Drury, because it's a great feeling week in and week out for sure.
Pretty darn good, man. I feel the same way about being up in Guelph. You know, they were the team that was closest to my hometown. I grew up in Arthur. Like, it's a special thing to be tied to these franchises in the way we are. And pretty darn good, man. It's a pretty lucky spot we find ourselves in. And it's a great fraternity of broadcasters. And it's great because of people like you, dude. I don't mean to butter you up at the end here, but, you know, you're a guy I think a lot of us look up to for very good reason. And you've been great to everybody, you know, Mark and myself, everybody on our crew. You've always been there to give us guidance, advice. Like, that's how this thing keeps going and keeps rolling forward, is having good people in it. And you're one of the best, buddy. So I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to run into you at the rink, man.
That is very kind of you. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Guelph, because that's where I started my OHL broadcasting career.
Yes, sir.
It is a fun league to be a part of. I'm thrilled to still be included in it. So thank you for this.
Absolutely, brother. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Clarkey will be on the show, and we'll have a very special guest, NBA analyst and Raptors radio voice, Paul Jones, will be joining us. We got to talk about this Kawhi situation. It won't go away. Hiding money in bushes. We don't know what's going on down there in LA. And we also got to talk about Adam Silver's comments about fans not being able to access games. Absolutely nuts stuff going on the court. And we'll talk with Jonesy next here on Instigating. Welcome back. The graphics, they're great.
They're amazing.
We're getting rave reviews here from super producer himself. Okay. You know, Clarkey knows what he's talking about when it comes to graphics. Even if it wasn't him that designed the logo of the show.
Not me.
This guy knows graphics. And listen, we love that because you're an expert, Clarkey. All your days at Leafs TV, the fan, sports. Listen, you're an expert, right? And when we aren't an expert on something, we like to bring on people that are experts. And I would consider this next guest, as promised in our previous segment, an expert on basketball. When we want to talk about ball on this show, you better get used to this guy because you're going to see a lot of them, okay? Our friend, you know him, Raptors radio analyst, okay? NBA TV Canada, Women's Olympics play-by-play for basketball. Former school principal. What hasn't this guy done? And hey, I feel confident saying this too. He's the better looking half of Smith and Jones. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, our friend Paul Jones. And hopefully Jonesy will be able to jump back on the show here with us. There he is. There he is. As promised, the better looking half of Smith and Jones. You hear this guy all over Raptors coverage. Paul Jones is with us. Jonesy, it's great to see you. It's been a long time. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Excited for the season to start. And it doesn't sound like there will be any tanking this year. The words Cooper Flag have been taken from everybody's lips because he's now playing in the NBA. And I'm quite interested to see how he's going to do. But there'll be none of those shenanigans, shall we say, this year with the Raptors.
Well, I think we like to hear that. And look, we're going to talk a little bit about the Raptors. We have to do that because we've got a Raptors guy on here, all right? And we will talk about the Raptors and the outlook for this season. But Jonesy, I'd be remiss if we didn't start somewhere. And brother, you want to talk about shenanigans. Let's talk a little bit about this guy right here. And
oh boy,
that's my friend and yours, Kawhi Leonard. This is an excerpt from a great article that John Hollinger, the senior NBA writer, wrote for The Athletic. Can you imagine if Kawhi Leonard were suddenly an unrestricted free agent halfway through the season, one who is potentially forbidden from re-signing with the Clippers? And that is all based off of this ongoing fiasco with this tree company and laundered money and illegitimate payments, cap circumvention. Jonesy, there's a lot to unpack here. And look, we're talking about a guy that, deserves to be and forever will be, I think, beloved here north of the 49th for what he did with the Raptors. But Kawhi and the Clippers have gotten themselves into quite a bit of hot water over this aspiration tree company. What are you making of all of this noise around this?
Well, innocent till proven guilty, Ryan and Clarkey, but it's death by 1,000 cuts right now. It just seems like every day a new piece of incendiary, damning information comes out against the Clippers and this deal, although we don't know all of it. And to look at John Hollinger's article, what if he was a free agent in January? How many teams would line up for him? Like, I think I heard somewhere with all of his contract and the crooked money and everything, he's had 266 games for $243 million. That's not a great deal. That's not, and as many championships as the two of you and me.
Yeah.
So
it's not ideal. And
no.
Look, there's a lot of stuff getting thrown around. Pablo Torre really broke this wide open about a week and a half ago. And look, this situation that we're discussing with the $28 million in endorsement money that this aspiration tree planting company gave Kawhi as part of his deal with the Clippers, it was investigated in 2019 when he signed it. But now the issue is this, what looks to be fake company for the sole purpose of seeding money and circumventing the salary cap is bankrupt now. And it's turning out that the Clippers don't have any evidence of Kawhi actually endorsing anything. I mean, Jonesy, look, how hard was it to maybe get this guy for 20 seconds? Like, for God's sake, shoot a video on your phone in the back of your 97 Suburban and talk about planting trees. Like, they didn't really cover their tracks here at all, it looks like.
No. Like we mentioned before, it just seems like everything is adding up the wrong way against the Clippers. And you wonder who was in on it. You really do. I mean, and I don't mean that from we're going to try and pull this off standpoint. Maybe somebody tried to pull some stuff off and some people didn't know. And that's where the issue's coming. Who knew, who was in on it, and who wasn't, right? It's go back to my days in education where the teacher says in the classroom, okay, I know somebody knows something in here. And there are half the class is going, what are you talking about? And the other half the class is starting to sweat. Same kind of deal here. Who knew and who didn't? So
Uncle Dennis
has become a
Do you know Uncle Dennis, Paul?
figure.
I do know Uncle Dennis. Clarkey.
Tell us about
I do
it.
know. And I will say this. This doesn't look good for him or on him, but Uncle Dennis is not some celebrated hanger-on. He is a bank executive. He is a guy that understands finances. And when Kawhi's father, was killed and was no longer in the picture, he stepped forward for his nephew and had some knowledge of how, finances and how it all works, taxes. He's got an idea. He's not some I'll say this, he's not some celebrated hanger-on. I don't like the way at times he's portrayed as some fast-talking shyster. He may come across like that, but there's a side of him that is certainly not that. Although I have to believe if the investigation finds something negative on him, he's going to incur some kind of penalty or ban or suspension or something of the sort. And listen, I did have an executive from another team say to me, a Western Conference team, not anywhere in the East, not anywhere close to the Raptors, said Uncle Dennis is about the money. And again, I'll come clean. Knowing Uncle Dennis, he's been really straight up with me. I haven't tried to contact him since this thing but in the time that I've known him, he has been straight with me, answered every phone call, told me what he knew about such and such, to the point where
call him right now and see what he
Yeah.
says.
To the point where on the day of the parade, there was some question as to the interviews being done and credentials. It was just a gong show. The poor PR department had a lot to manage. And my presence and pass and whatever must have slipped through the cracks. And it was at the point where they didn't know which float I was going to be on and how these interviews were going to get done. And Uncle Dennis just said to me, Jonesy, you come with me. You come on our float. And somebody from the NBA that was producing the parade said, you're not allowed on that float. That's for the two trophies, the MVP trophy, the Larry O'Brien trophy, and the players and their families. And Uncle Dennis said, well, today this guy's my family. He's on this float if you guys can't figure it out.
Pretty stand-up guy. And look, I not knowing Uncle Dennis and not having ever interacted with him, I think that his role in this could quite simply be as simple as he tried to get the best deal for his nephew. There were a lot of demands, which are very public. He wanted a chunk of ownership. Like the demands were pretty intense, including this demand for a certain floor of endorsement money, guaranteed endorsement money. I think that Uncle Dennis, it might come out that he quite simply just wanted the best deal for his nephew, saw this on the table, got it eventually from the LA Clippers, because there's rumors that there was a similar deal with the Lakers on the table, and that the Toronto brass ponied up and had the same deal in front of me, ultimately chose the Clippers. I don't know that Uncle Dennis is necessarily an expert, and I could be wrong, on league rules, contract rules, cap circumvention rules. I highly doubt he is. He's a money guy who knows his stuff financially and probably isn't aware of some of the ins and outs with cap circumvention. But you mentioned a potential penalty for him. What about Steve Ballmer, who is an interesting cat, to say the least? And I heard Brian Hayes on TSN talking this week about how when it comes to Ballmer, if it comes out that they knowingly, filtered this money in a back channel way to circumvent the cap, that everything should be on the table in terms of punishment for Ballmer, from losing draft picks, money, to maybe even potentially being forced to sell the team. Where do you stand on that, Jonesy?
Well, I think he's a good owner for the league because he came in, he bought the Clippers. You know, the rumors were that when Donald Sterling had to sell, and listen, let me just jump off the beaten path here for a second, Ryan and Clarkey. The last couple times the NBA investigated owners, Donald Sterling, Robert Sarver, for their lack of humanitarian graces, they had to sell the team.
Mm-hmm.
The last time a major cap circumvention happened with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Joe Smith, there was no selling the team, but there was a severe penalty handed down in terms of fines and draft picks. So everything on the table? Yeah, I guess so. But here's a guy who wants to win, is I think, good for the league. When everybody, you know, the Clippers were up for sale, it was like, oh, 1.1 billion, you know, 1.3 billion, whatever. You know, a Bomber came in and said, here's 2 billion, give me the team. Like, end of story. So in that sense, he's not afraid to spend. He's good for the league in that sense, a guy with deep pockets. He's tried to inject some pride into that Clipper franchise. By the way, they were my favorite team as a kid because they were the Buffalo Braves. Before John Y. Brown, I believe, moved them to San Diego. I think he was the owner, to become the San Diego Clippers, and then they moved to LA to become the LA. That's the old Buffalo Braves. So when people see them wearing baby blue uniforms, that's where it comes from. And I think in that sense, Bomber's good for the league. If it find out that there's a cap circumvention, I wouldn't force him to sell the team. I'd give him a fine. He might do a Randy Moss on it, straight cash, homie, because if I had his money, I'd burn Ryan's, Clarkey's, and everybody who's listening and watching. So a fine and maybe some draft picks.
Somewhere along the line had to know this wasn't right.
Well, yeah. I mean, and to Ryan's point, Uncle Dennis is not the guy that should be blamed over cap circumvention.
No.
Somebody's got to come in and, you know, when you bring a knife to a club, if you think it's okay, the bouncer goes, oh, whoa. No, you can't do that.
Right.
And somewhere, somebody from the Clippers organization, knowing that if this does come out, what has to say, whoa, we can't do this.
Do you think it could potentially, with the, you know, the feeling that that's the case, do you think that this could potentially be a situation where the Clippers got desperate, felt like if they didn't do this, they'd lose the player and be in a weaker position, and so the feeling in the room was just, let's just push this through and we'll deal with it later?
Well, let's go back a little retrospect on what I said. That franchise had always been looked at as one of the lesser kind of doormat franchises. Donald Sterling never spent the money, so he was always under the cap and always got a chunk of the revenue sharing money. Steve Ballmer buys it and says, no, we're gonna polish up this franchise. We're gonna take some pride in it. We're going to build our own arena, have our own practice facility. Like, we're not going to share, we're not going to be the basement tenant for the Lakers and Staples anymore, where we have to cover up Laker banners and retired jerseys during our games. We're not doing that. And what better way to make a splash than get the guy who had just become a two-time Finals MVP, winning his third ring, to come to your franchise, to try to make it relevant, to fight for LA with the Lakers. You saw when he was when Kawhi was signed, the billboards all over Los Angeles, with Kawhi Leonard, the board man. Same kind of thing that Mikhail Prokhorov tried to do when he bought the Brooklyn Nets, putting billboards outside Madison Square Garden, right in the Knicks' backyard. So, yeah, they're trying to make a splash. And so maybe, Ryan, to your point, it's like, hey, man, if we're making a splash, we're swinging for the fence, and we are throwing caution to the wind. I can't say I blame them. I just think the execution of it, if I underscore 5 ifs, this is true, was the wrong way to do it.
No question about it. No question. Can I move on, Ryan? Let's talk a little Raptors. Is that okay?
Well, before we talk about the
knew you would have
Raptors,
had something.
because there's a connection here to another pretty esteemed gentleman that took some heat over the last few days, and that is the commissioner, Adam Silver. And Adam Silver, I mean, on top of having to field questions about this Kawhi Leonard situation and, some of his comments about, I did know about aspiration, I'm not familiar with it. He had to clarify a lot. Well, he also had to clarify a pretty interesting statement he made about a week ago, Jonesy, about the NBA being a highlight league. And if people have an issue finding the game somewhere, the question was basically posed to Adam Silver. What would you say to fans that are having trouble finding games on television with all these different subscription services now at play? Apple, Hulu, Peacock, everybody's involved. What would you say to fans that are frustrated that they can't watch all of their team's games, easily? And he had these jilted comments about, well, you can go on Twitter and find highlights and this, that, and the other. I want to bring up a quote that he made just a couple days ago here, kind of clarifying his position, if you will, because he really took some hardcore heat for this, which I agreed with. I'll read them to you verbatim here. A portion of the question, the end of the question, was about the impact of social media, Silver said. That's what I was answering on our sport, and what I was saying in a very positive way. I think it's additive to those who watch our games live and increase the likelihood they'll watch our games live. By saying highlights based, I meant when I watch traditional Sports Center and they have top 10 plays and 5 of them are NBA plays, I'm like, yeah, I'm not thinking, oh no, more highlights are being promoted from our league. So he basically kind of walked it back as saying, I don't mean if you can't find the game, go and watch Twitter. But when you first heard those comments, Jonesy, like when I first heard it, I was like, what is this guy doing? He needs a speechwriter.
Listen, I'll full disclosure here. I'm old fashioned. I watched the NBA when it wasn't popular, when the finals, I'm 67 years old, when the finals were on tape delay, starting at midnight after Alice in Mel's Diner, and the result was already out there. You were watching the game, kind of knowing the score, not like it is now with social media. Like if you wanted to stay away from it, you could. And that's how it was built. And now it's become so popular that I don't think everybody watches games. I think they watch highlights. I mean, I sit and every night I'm on League Pass or on my TV, and I'm channel surfing 3 or 4 games, and I watch the games. But in this microwave generation that wants everything and wants it now, people don't have time to sit there and watch games, or they don't want to. So they watch highlights. So that's where the social media stuff comes in. And it is too bad that you don't have, but we've advanced past that. You don't have a game of the week. Clarkey, you and I are old enough to remember when, whether it be hockey on a Saturday and a Wednesday, the Leafs were on.
That's right.
And the Saturday night game didn't even start on TV. It came on at 8:30 at about the end of the first period after, I don't know, the Saint or Don Messer's Jubilee or whatever was on. CBC. And then my dad, God rest his soul, let us stay up to watch the Wednesday night games, the first period, before we had to go to bed to go to school. And there was only one baseball game on a week, the Saturday game of the week. And the NBA came on Sunday afternoons. And Sunday was football. Now we got 2 days without football, Tuesday and Wednesday. That's it. The rest of the time, there's NFL football on Thursday. There's college football on Friday, Saturday, and you can watch. And so this is what we've become.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm like you too. Like, I think I'm like you. I watch my team. Yes. But I won't sit and watch the Capitals and the Canadians. I just don't.
But Clarkey, that's why my son, when he was growing up, was a Senators fan. Because he wanted to piss off his older brother and sister who were Leaf fans.
Yeah, that happened.
And he wanted a Carlson jersey for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And he could sit there and watch the Senators every night because they were his team. Right. And I think that's the thing that is wrong. The team should find a way in their local market to have people who are fans in Chicago or Denver or Charlotte or Minnesota, especially in the smaller markets, to be able to watch their team.
Yeah, I really think it's that simple as well. Like the blackouts like that. If a lot of people consuming games in the way that you and I used to and that we all used to, because that's all that was available to us, if that has kind of gone by the wayside, I think that the other thing that needs to be modernized is these localized blackouts. It's an extreme joke. I cannot stand it that in Toronto, if a game is on Apple TV, fans in Toronto can't watch the Blue Jays, for instance, or I just don't think that's right. But what do I know?
Ryan, that goes back to the days. And again, I date myself and probably date Clarkey. In the CFL, when I was an Argo fan, games weren't on TV locally. You know why? Because they wanted to get your ass to the stadium.
Right. Yeah. How'd that work?
Yeah.
Yeah. The old Rocky Words thing,
I was such a fan. I remember, Jonesy, when I was such an Argo fan, and I hated that whole, I can't remember how many miles around the stadium it was.
Yeah.
But like, I would pray that night I would be able to watch Czechs in Peterborough because they were further. And if the atmospheric conditions were right, I could get it when I located my antenna.
Channel 12.
Yeah.
Channel 12. CHEX Peterborough. Right. They got the Argo game. Yeah.
Right. We went through this, Ryan. This is what we went through.
Shout out to Channel 12, man. Like,
that's what we went through to watch a game. It was craziness.
When the ABA was coming into existence and there was this guy named Dr. J wowing the ABA, I begged my father to buy a box that is probably as big as my phone that had UHF so I could watch Channel 29, WUTV in Buffalo.
You got it.
Because they carried the ABA games.
That's right. They carried the Sabres too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this is slowly breaking into an episode of WKRP Cincinnati. That's a great show. It's a great show. Jonesy, before we let you go, as Clarkey said, he's got some Raptors questions for you. He wants to know what's going
big
on.
News in my mind is no Masai. How's this team going to be different without the leader there?
I think with Bobby Webster at the helm, you're going to see a lot of the same kind of stuff. They always say your culture is tested when the leader's not there. And your legacy as a leader is how many leaders you leave behind. And not that they're not going to miss Masai, but I think they've got it to the point where it's going to keep rolling. Again, not that they won't miss him and things that he was able to do and his presence and all of those things, but this too will pass. I never thought I'd see, what would I do when Dr. J left basketball? oh, these two guys, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, came along. And when Bird had a bad back and couldn't play anymore, and Magic had HIV and couldn't play anymore, and it's like, wow, this is it. This is the end of basketball. Oh, along comes some guy named Michael Jordan. And there was Isaiah Thomas. And there was the Pistons Bulls rivalry, and then the Lakers Bulls rivalry, and the Lakers Pistons. And then all of a sudden there was a resurgence with the Celtics, thanks to a trade that was made that brought Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett. And then LeBron went to Miami. And wait a minute, this guy, Dirk, stole a championship. Oh, wait a minute. Here comes Tim Duncan. And on it goes. Mm-hmm. So I guess my point is, while, you're kind of sad to see Masai go in that sense, this too shall pass. It will move forward, and the culture will be tested. What they've built will be tested, and they're going to be okay. And I think this could be a good year.
Well, we love to hear that, my friend, and we love to see you. We love to have you on the show. This will not be the last time when the Raptors get kicked off here. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're excited to get you back on and break down some of their games for us, because they got a lot of good young players, and I'm hopeful for the same thing, Jonesy, that we see a good year out of them. Buddy, we really appreciate you doing this, my friend.
Pleasure, guys. You know the number, and call anytime. And like when Chris Clark calls, I answer the phone, because it's usually something good at the other end. And I'm glad I picked up the phone in 1999, because that was a real kind of trampoline for my career, when that guy had an idea and people weren't sure about it. But here we are, 26 years later, that he helped create the longest standing, certainly basketball broadcast team in Canada. I don't, how long of Bonesy has Joe and Ralphie been together?
Oh, gosh, the combination, I don't know. I mean, Joe's been around since 80 something.
Yeah.
But
the two of them together,
I don't know,
because that might be the only combination as a duo that's ahead of Eric and I in terms of broadcasting games together. So
pretty incredible, man.
Now,
yeah.
I hope I'm not touching a touchy subject here, but are you on the road this year?
We are not.
Okay, I'm just
we are not.
I'm just going to leave it there,
and that's where we'll leave it. Absolutely, Jonesy, you're the best.
That's the episode they have to pay to watch, Chris.
How many teams
right,
don't go on the road?
One.
That's what I thought.
And that's all. That's
just
all
asking questions. Folks. I'm not asking for opinions. I'm just asking for the facts.
And I'm just providing factual answers.
Get you in trouble. I'm just asking.
Absolutely,
I'm just providing factual answers.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's why we love you, buddy. Paul Jones. Follow him on Twitter at Paul_Jones. Listen to him all year on Raptors broadcast. Jonesy, thank you for doing this, brother.
Pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. There he is. Paul Jones, Raptors analyst. We love Jonesy. You're going to see a lot more of him on this show, by the way. That dude's such a beauty, Clark. And you guys have had a long history together, like he said, obviously, right? Like,
obviously. And again,
incredible
my memory
guy.
Isn't like a lot of other people's, but I do remember back in the day, as they say. It was
back in the day, dude.
You know what? Like good people,
WKRP.
It's all about good people in my mind. And when you surround yourself and give good people opportunities, that's what happens. 26 years later, good people survive. There
Jonesy, one of the best people out there, one of the best broadcasters in this fine nation of ours. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Paul_Jones. Spell like how it sounds. Can't wait to get him back on here to chat some Raptors. And you know what, Clarkey? To round out the show this week,
we don't have much time left. We got to go.
Talking about good people, right? And having a long career and being very successful. Well, we happen to be recording the show this week on a very important day. Today is September 17th.
It is.
And it is the birthday of that fine gentleman right there,
can't tell who that
Alexander
is.
Ovechkin. Hold on. Let me just fix
Uh-oh.
it here. I'm not perfect yet.
No.
I'm not perfect.
Oh, there we go.
My God, am I trying? And that man is perfect. Celebrating the 40th birthday of the greatest goal scorer there ever was, has been, and will be. There's the record. Most goals after turning 30. Look at the guys behind him. Oh my God. Gordie Howe, Phil Esposito, Johnny Busick. Just an incredible Esposito. Just some fun numbers we're sharing to
No one
celebrate
cares
Ovi's
except
birthday.
you, buddy.
You know?
No one
Just
cares
some
except
fun numbers.
You're the only
Look
one
at
that
this.
cares about all this.
Highest goals per game rate since turning 35. He's the only guy on the list with above half a goal a game. Absolutely gross stats. There's his 5-year intervals. This guy doesn't slow down. He is an absolute machine.
Make
the
sure
Russian
you get out and watch
machine.
him this year, his last year in the NHL. So
it could be.
Oh, it is. They've already leaked it out. The Caps leaked it out.
They didn't leak it.
They did.
It could be incredible. Look at that. One thing on that list is not like the others. At 39, he was third in the league in goals, and he broke his damn leg, ladies and gentlemen. There will never be another
ahead of him on that one. No, that's good.
Yeah, that's good. You know, as you see there, though,
he might not have scored in those
82 games.
He might not have scored any goals in those. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. He might not have scored in those 17. Yeah, you never know. Pretty incredible stuff, Ovi. And you know what's strange, though, too? Like, just funny happenstance. Like, it's Austin Matthews' birthday, too, right? Like, he shares a birthday with Ovi. So, like, I don't know if that's the graphics. Stars. Well, it's too late, brother. I'm in charge here.
Well, you better do some homework and figure out whose birthday it will be next week when we record the show.
I'm well aware of whose birthday it is, buddy. Don't start. Just calm yourself down.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. All right. Thank you to our friends Mike Farwell. Of course, you can catch the Mike Farwell Show weekdays every day, Monday through Friday on 570. And of course, you can hear him doing a tremendous job calling Kitchener Rangers hockey on 570 as well. He'll be there all year calling it up in the booth on the radio. And thanks to our friend Paul Jones, radio analyst and radio voice, longtime voice of the Raptors. And of course, you can hear him as well on NBA TV Canada, does play-by-play for women's Olympic basketball. I mean, what hasn't Jonesy done? And he comes on this show and delivers great information and great takes on the hard court. Clarkey, another show in the can with our friends on Rogers TV. We appreciate you guys watching. All right, all over the Rogers coverage area. Remember, you can find this podcast on all your favorite podcast apps, including our YouTube channel as well. Give us a subscribe. We appreciate it. You can find all of our social media clips and follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Instigating Pod. Very simple stuff. Give us a follow. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week, Clarkey and I, for special birthday celebrations. Okay? We will be back next week with more Instigating. Stay tuned.
See ya.